Hello guys, and welcome back to another Pokemon X and Y Myths and Mysteries Theory episode. I hope you're having a nice day today, and I hope you're all excited for Pokemon X and Y in just a few weeks. I'm very excited, I can't wait to get my hands on the games. But anyway, we've already done 2 theories on Pokemon X and Y, as I've said. We have done the DNA theory, and we've also done the 3D theory, which was a very simple theory. Now today we're looking at another theory, which I am dubbing the Germ theory. Sounds a bit weird, yeah I know. But I'm going to start off with sort of background you need to know for this theory. Now, a germ layer, occasionally referred to as a germinal epithelium, is a group of cells formed during animal embryogenesis. That's when the embryo is being generated, so when you're being made, basically. They're also particularly pronounced in the vertebrates. However, all animals more complex than sponges, which the simple things that are produce 2 or 3 primary tissue layers. Now, animals with bilateral symmetry produce a 3rd layer, whereas animals with radial symmetry only produce 2. Now, the first 2 layers that are produced in animals with radial symmetry, like cnidarians, produce 2 germ layers, which are the ectoderm and the endoderm, which makes them diploblastic. Bit random word there, but yeah. Anyway, so animals of bilateral symmetry produce a 3rd layer between these 2 layers, which is called the mesoderm, which makes them triploblastic. Germ layers eventually give rise to all of an animal's tissues and organs through the process of organogenesis. So basically the germ layers are the original parts of you. You started with 3 germ layers: the endoderm, the mesoderm, and the ectoderm. So first we're looking at the ectoderm. Now the ectoderm, as I said, is one of the 3 primary germ cell layers in a very early embryo, so it's obviously not very long. And generally speaking, the ectoderm differentiates, which means changes into sort of thing, to form the nervous system, which is the spine, the peripheral nerves, and also your brain, tooth enamel, and the epidermis, which is the outer part of integument. Ignore that. And it also forms the lining of the mouth, the anus, the nostrils, the sweat glands, the hair, and the nails. Now, in vertebrates, the ectoderm actually has 3 parts, but we shall ignore that for the moment, and we shall move on to our next layer, which is the mesoderm. Now, the mesoderm is kind of the middle layer, whereas the ectoderm and endoderm are sort of like inside-outside. And the mesoderm ends up forming the mesenchyme, which is connective tissue, mesothelium, non-epithelial blood cells, and coelomacytes. And it also lines the columns, which form the muscles in a process known as myogenesis, septa, and also mesenteries, which are lengthwise partitions and also form parts of the gonads, the rest being the gametes. We should ignore that bit, but basically it ends up being your cardiac muscle, skeletal muscle cells, tubal cell of the kidney, red blood cells, and smooth muscle in the gut, so very muscle based. Finally then we have the endoderm, which is the final layer, and eventually forms stuff like, well, your liver, basically, not your liver, sorry, your organs, including the stomach, the colon, the liver, okay, it was the liver, the pancreas, the urinary bladder, and epithelial parts of the trachea, the lungs, the pharynx, the thyroid, the parathyroid, and the intestines. So basically, to sum up, ectoderm is nerves and sort of connections, mesoderm is muscles, and endoderm is organs. Now, if we look at, actually look at the Legendaries finally now. First, if we look at Xerneas and Yveltal, obviously the only ones released so far, we can see that Xerneas actually looks quite a lot like, well, they both look very biological, they both have sort of organic sort of traits to them. And you can see Xerneas' design highlight is more of its horns, and Yveltal's design highlight is more sort of the pulsing, the red, black stuff like on its body. Now we can say that Xerneas represents the ectoderm, which is to do with nerves, as its horns look very similar to nerves, it makes a lot of sense there, you can see. And Yveltal is a representation of muscles, blood vessels, stuff like that, due to its kind of red pumping blood, also its sort of muscle-like arms and a tail, and it looks very similar to it in general, which leaves us with the Z legendary, which nobody knows what it is, and that will represent the endoderm, so very much lungs, organs generally, so lungs, liver, stuff like that. So that's going to be very interesting to see what that comes out to turn like. So this is another theory really, we have, each legendary representing a germ layer, so we can really just use this to kind of guess what the Z legendary will be like. as we look at in the final theory for X and Y, it could be a snake-like creature, and it could have, sort of lungs, and, well, it's not lungs in particular, but it's going to have, I think, a very sort of pinkish design, maybe, pinkish green, maybe, that's my guess here, but we should have to see, guys. I think it's going to be, very sort of, or not muscly, but more lungy sort of thing, not muscles, not nerves, sort of in the middle, you guys know what I'm trying to say here, but yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see if this is sort of built on in the games. I'm not quite sure how they kind of put it in. Xerneas is the life Pokemon, Yveltal is the death Pokemon, or the destruction Pokemon. So it doesn't really fit in that sense. But we can easily, I think you can clarify that they're based sort of on these, these three germ layers. So guys, what do you think about this theory? Do you think it's true, or do you think it's false? Please leave a like and a comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. One more X and Y theory to come soon, and of course then X and Y will come out, and I'll try and cover some theories from those games if there are any I can find in there. Anyway guys, thank you for watching. Bye guys.